So, you want to own an airline. Picture it. Your name painted on the tail. A fleet of jets carrying 100 million people a year across the country. It sounds like one of the great businesses on Earth. It is, in fact, one of the worst. Over the last 50 years, U.S. airlines have collectively lost more money than they've made. Almost every major American carrier you can name has filed for bankruptcy at least once, and most of them more than once. There's an old line from one of the most famous investors alive that an airline is where capital goes to die. And yet, a handful of people who own airlines are absurdly, quietly rich. So before you buy a single plane, you need to understand the trick. Because the airline isn't the business. The airline is the disguise. Let's start with the cost of getting in. The first thing you'll need is airplanes. And airplanes are the single most expensive moving object most companies will ever buy. A brand new single-aisle jet, the kind that flies you from one city to the next, carries a sticker price north of $100 million. Nobody actually pays that. Airlines buy in bulk and negotiate the price down by half or more, but you're still spending tens of millions of dollars per plane, and you need dozens of them before you have anything resembling an airline. That's why most carriers don't buy at all. They lease. You pay a leasing company a monthly fee, the way you'd lease a car, except the car costs $50 million, and you need 40 of them. Then there's the part you can't buy on a showroom floor. You need a certificate from the Federal Aviation Administration that legally allows you to fly paying passengers. Getting one means proving you have the planes, the trained pilots, the maintenance program, the insurance, and the manuals to operate safely, and it can take 2 to 3 years of inspections before regulators sign off. You'll also need somewhere to land. Gates and takeoff slots at major airports are limited, fought over, and at the busiest hubs they change hands for millions of dollars apiece. So before you've sold a single ticket, you've spent years and hundreds of millions of dollars just to earn the right to lose money. Which brings us to the part nobody warns you about. Here's the problem with selling seats. A seat on a plane is the most perishable product in the world. A grocery store can sell yesterday's bread tomorrow at a discount. You cannot. The moment your plane lifts off the runway with an empty seat, that seat is gone forever. You can never sell it again. So you're under constant pressure to fill every single chair, which means slashing prices the closer you get to departure, which means the passenger sitting next to someone who paid $400 might have paid $80. Now stack your costs on top of that. Fuel can swallow a fifth to a third of everything you spend, and you don't control the price of it. Pilots, flight attendants, mechanics, ground crews, all of them cost money whether the plane is full or empty. Add airport fees, maintenance, insurance, and the lease payments on those $50 million jets. When you run the numbers, the airline industry in a good year earns just a few dollars of profit per passenger. Not per ticket, per person. You move someone across the entire country, feed them a tiny cup of soda, and you walk away with the price of that same soda at a gas station. In a bad year, you lose money on every single one of them. This is why the bankruptcies keep coming. When the economy dips, when fuel spikes, when a virus empties the skies, the whole industry tips over at once. And the airlines have turned even bankruptcy into a tool. Filing for Chapter 11 lets a carrier tear up its old contracts, walk away from pension obligations, shrink its debts, and come back leaner while still flying the entire time. Passengers barely notice. The same logo is on the same tail the next morning. So if flying people loses money and bankruptcy is practically a scheduled event, you're probably wondering why anyone sane would want in. Here's the secret. The smart airlines figured out something a long time ago. They stopped trying to make their money by flying you. They make it by printing money. Not literally, but close. Think about the miles in your frequent flyer account right now. Where did they come from? Most people assume you earn miles by flying. You barely do anymore. The vast majority of miles in circulation are created the moment you swipe a co-branded credit card at the grocery store, the gas pump, the pharmacy. And here's the move that changed everything. The airline doesn't give those miles away for free. It sells them, in bulk, to a bank. Here's how it works. A giant bank wants to put an airline's logo on a credit card because people will spend more on a card that earns travel rewards. So the bank buys billions of miles from the airline in cash upfront and hands them out to cardholders as rewards. The airline gets real dollars today in exchange for miles it conjures out of thin air. And those miles are the perfect product because the airline controls everything about them. It decides how many miles a flight costs. It can quietly raise that number overnight with no warning, and your miles are suddenly worth less. A chunk of all miles issued are never even redeemed. People forget about them, accounts go stale, the miles simply expire. In the industry that's called breakage, and it's pure profit on a product that cost almost nothing to make. So how big is this really? Look at the largest carriers. One major US airline pulled in around $8 billion in a single recent year just from its deal with one credit card company. That was roughly 1 out of every $10 the entire airline earned, coming not from flying, but from a bank. The same airline's executives have said the spending on those cards adds up to nearly 1% of the entire economic output of the United States. Another major carrier collected more than $6 billion from its own card partner in a single year, and the margins on this are nothing like flying. Selling miles to a bank can be roughly 40 to 50% profit, while flying a human being to another city barely breaks even. Now here's the number that should stop you cold, and it's the reason I need you to do one quick thing before we go further. Back in 2020, when the pandemic grounded the planes and the airlines were desperate for cash, several of them went to lenders and offered up the one asset they knew was bulletproof, not their planes, their loyalty programs. And when one major airline had its frequent flyer program independently appraised, the value came back somewhere between $18 and $30 billion. The airline's entire stock market value at the time was less than half of that. Read that again. The Little Points program was worth more than the airline that owned it. The jets, the gates, the brand, the routes, all of it, worth less than the database of miles bolted onto the side. People in the industry have a name for what airlines have quietly become. Credit cards with wings. If you're finding it useful to see how these businesses actually make money instead of how they pretend to, take 1 second and subscribe, because this next part is where it gets uncomfortable, and it's the part the airlines really don't advertise. Because the loyalty program is only half of the hidden business. The other half is the fee. Look at how a ticket is priced today. The fare you see first is a teaser, kept artificially low so you'll click. Then comes the real airline. A bag costs extra. Choosing your seat costs extra. Boarding earlier costs extra. Changing your flight, extra. A little more legroom, extra. The ultra-low-cost carriers turned this into an entire philosophy. The seat is nearly free. Everything else is the product. Across the US industry, checked bag fees alone bring in billions of dollars a year, and that's just the suitcases. The genius of it is psychological. You compare the cheap headline fare against another airline's cheap headline fare. You pick the lowest one, and only after you've committed does the airline start adding everything back. By the time you're done, you may have paid more than the airline that simply showed you the honest price up front. You didn't buy a flight. You bought a base, and then you bought it again, one fee at a time. But now I have to tell you about the other side of owning an airline, because this business doesn't just lose money slowly. It can vanish almost overnight. When the pandemic hit in early 2020, demand didn't shrink. It disappeared. One major US airline lost more than $2 billion in a single 3-month stretch. Planes flew nearly empty just to keep their airport slots. Within weeks, carriers that had looked rock solid were mortgaging the family silver, those very loyalty programs, just to borrow enough cash to survive the year. The thing that makes an airline so fragile is the same thing that makes a bank fragile. Your costs are enormous and fixed. The jets, the leases, the staff, all of it has to be paid whether anyone is flying or not. But your revenue can evaporate in a heartbeat the instant people decide not to travel. A storm, a recession, a scare, a spike in fuel, and the money stops while the bills keep coming. So if you're going to do this, there are rules to keep your airline alive longer than the last guy. First, never bet the company on the price of fuel. Airlines try to lock in fuel prices in advance, and when they guess wrong, the loss can be catastrophic. Second, don't let one route, one city, one type of customer carry your whole business, because the day that market dries up, so do you. Third, and this is the real lesson, protect the part that actually makes money. Your most valuable asset isn't a single airplane. It's the loyalty program and the data inside it, the names, the spending habits, the addresses of millions of customers, the thing a bank will pay billions to access. Lose a plane and you lease another. Lose the program and you've lost the only part of the airline that was ever truly profitable. So let's pull it all together and answer the real question. How much money do you actually make doing this right? Run 2 versions. Version 1, you build a small budget carrier. You lease a modest fleet, you fly a handful of busy routes, you keep the headline fares brutally low, and you make your money on bags, seats, and fees. In a good year, you might squeeze a thin profit out of it. In a bad year, a fuel spike, or a slow season, you're underwater, and the odds of bankruptcy hang over you the entire time. Most small carriers live and die on this knife's edge, and plenty of them simply die. Version 2 is where the real money lives. You scale into a major carrier, hundreds of planes, dozens of cities, and, crucially, a loyalty program big enough that a giant bank wants to partner with you. Now, the flying side can limp along near break-even, and it almost doesn't matter, because the program stapled to it is throwing off billions of dollars a year at nearly 50% margins. That's the version where owners get rich. Not by moving people through the air, but by quietly running a bank and parking it inside an airline so nobody asks too many questions. So picture your airline one more time. Your name on the tail. 100 million passengers a year. And every one of them stepping aboard convinced they're buying a flight, when what you're really selling them is a credit card with a plane attached. The flying barely makes a dime. The bank in the back makes the fortune. Not bad for an industry everyone agrees is one of the worst businesses in the world.